This is a video that we took of a recent trip out to the Farne Islands in Northumberland, launching at Bamborough Castle there in the background on a beautiful summer's day. Absolutely stunning. Summer? I say summer, I mean February. The Farne Islands string out from the Northumberland coast about 6 miles offshore in total. There are strong tide races that flood from north to south between the islands that creates interesting water features on the way. So on this particular day we were blessed with sunshine, smooth seas and absolutely gorgeous weather. No swell at all. So we met off Bamborough Beach and then paddled across to Inner Farne. This is Inner Farne, having made that first crossing. We had a fairly good ferry glide to do. The tides are running strongly this day and we could now just enjoy the cliffs on Inner Farne itself. The next stage was to go around the north side of Inner Farne, and this would mean crossing a powerful eddy line and paddling upstream through quite a strong tide race. There's Bamborough Castle in the distance behind us, about 2 miles away, but now paddling upstream through the first of the tide races of the day. There are going to be many more of these throughout the day. Around this north side we were exposed to the power of the tide. The tide was running from north to south and it washes through some little rocks and skerries which allow just a little bit of introductory type rock hopping to do. Great fun. But we've been on the water for all of an hour or so, so we felt like a cup of coffee. On the sound here that runs between Inner Farne and Outer Farne, there's a little ledge that we can hop out and take some refreshments. It's an easy landing when the conditions are like they are today, but when the swell's running there can be some surf on this little rocky shoreline which makes it a bit trickier. But even today it probably took us longer to get out on the rocks than it took us to drink our coffee. But we were soon on our way again, this time crossing Staple Sound to get out towards the Outer Farne Islands. Staple Sound's a couple of miles across and it's a big ferry glide. The tide was flooding through at probably its maximum rate about now. Started out fairly sheltered, but then we soon had some confused water to cross. And then clear evidence that the tide was running quite fast as the water got choppier and choppier and small standing waves were kicked up. Even on a day like today when the overall sea condition was smooth, with very little swell running through, the tide was creating these interesting water features. Great fun. When there is swell or any wind in this area, then these seas can become very confused indeed and really challenging. The water was crystal clear and you can even see the seabed a couple of metres below where we're paddling here. Absolutely stunning. But you soon break away from the choppy water and then you're paddling on a glass-like surface. Absolutely gorgeous paddling. And we've got a 2-mile ferry glide here. It's a bit deceptive, the sea state, because actually this whole body of water is moving really, really quickly. So it's like paddling on a conveyor belt. So we do a big ferry glide, moving further and further away from the mainland. And it's a time to spend about 20 minutes just practicing technique. And we soon approach Outer Farne, a little cluster of islands. And at Outer Farne, there's usually a swell running here, and obviously the tide's running between the rocks and the skerries, which gives us all a chance just to practice some boat handling near rocks in some slightly rougher water, and a little bit of rock hopping as well. Here's Helen getting stuck in. Staying in the green water, you just go up and down. Really good fun. get too close to the rocks where the water's turning white, then there's a danger of getting washed onto them. So turning our bows eastward again, heading further out to sea, we can just see now Longstone Lighthouse in the distance. We had a mile or two to paddle to get there, and we had several tide races to cross. So we're paddling in the eddies and then crossing the tide races between the islands. Really good fun, a great playground. So there are numerous little chutes and tongues of moving water here, little standing waves to surf and play on. And we were out today with a group from the Marine Activities Centre from Sunderland, a staff training day for them, and also from East Barnby Outdoor Education Centre. So we were doing some coaching, and it was an opportunity for everybody to practice some breaking in, some breaking out, some ferry gliding. And the waves were building up nicely, giving people a chance to practice their surfing skills as well. What could be better? Moving water, sunshine, good company. What an awesome day out. Here's Helen, timing her run, picking up the appropriate wave, and she's off.
Oh, okay. But today, yeah, and we might have an eddy behind the main rock. We'll go have a look, yeah. Yeah, the wind's got up, isn't it?
Steve and I chatted about our tactics for getting across the rest of the tide races to get to our lunch spot. But before we did that, we decided just to spend a bit more time playing and practicing in the tide races. The wind started to get up, so even though the tide was slackening off, we found that the wind blowing over the tide created rougher water. It built the waves up nicely, and we had some great surf rides. But now it's time to turn our attention towards lunch. So we enjoyed a few more runs and then started to head towards Longstone Lighthouse. Longstone Lighthouse is made famous by Grace Darling. She was famous as a teenager for being the lighthouse keeper's daughter, who went out into the teeth of a gale in the middle of the night in a rowing boat, an open rowing boat, with her father to rescue the crew of a ship that had been wrecked on the islands. The island's actually near where we'd been playing there. And of course this lighthouse, like most lighthouses now, isn't manned anymore. It's an automatic lighthouse, but a great place for us to stop for lunch, and in fact one of the few places that you're allowed to stop on the Farne Islands. So we already showed you the first one, where we stopped for a coffee break earlier, and then you've got to go all the way out to Longstone, about 6 miles offshore altogether, before you can stop and stretch your legs again for a well-earned rest. So here we go, back on our way again, this time heading slowly back towards Bamborough Beach. We go around the southern side of the islands now, and this is the nesting grounds for the main bird colonies. These are guillemots, just arrived back just this week. There hadn't been any the week before. Loads of them, hundreds and hundreds of guillemots pouring around the skies. But also some great rock hopping, and even though today there wasn't much swell running, the nature of the shoreline here is just fantastic, just for zooming along in your kayak. I just love that feeling of speed as you go along really close to the rocks and the cliffs, manoeuvring in and out of the nooks and crannies. So these are the pinnacles. These are 3 stacks of rock jutting proudly out of the sea, and these are one of the main nesting areas for a lot of the birds. So the birds are just returning now. Not nesting yet, but starting to pick ledges.
Why do they nest there? Like, you know, just what kittiwakes do. Pretty inaccessible though, isn't it? Right, it is, yeah. Yeah, you're safe there from anything else, except the weather.
Always amazed by the little nooks and crannies that the birds pick the nest on. Absolutely amazing. These are little kittiwakes that are picking little ledges. As you paddle away from the skerries here, away from the stacks, usually there's some swell coming up from the south. So again, more great rock hopping to do along the cliff edges. We're heading round now towards some of the main nesting colonies. Absolutely stunning as we're looking back towards the mainland. And then you're just greeted with the most amazing sight. Just thousands and thousands of birds. These are all guillemots here, just streaming off the cliffs. Absolutely amazing. Not nesting yet, but all starting to collect, ready to start the breeding season. People were glad they had their hats on. If you look up at the sky, keep your mouth shut. So still at Outer Farne here, just tucking around the bottom left-hand corner, the southwest corner, and you can really get an impression of the breeding areas here. So just white rocks, just absolutely covered in birds. Like I said, just thousands and thousands of guillemots starting to collect already. Puffins haven't arrived back yet. I'm sure they'll be here later on. So time for some refreshments. Helen had bought the sweets, so Ian, myself and Andy duly obliged by eating them for her. Thanks, Helen. Always brings a big bag of Haribos with her. And then from Outer Farne, that just left the last couple of miles ferry glide back to Bamborough Beach. Absolutely gorgeous paddling in the late afternoon sun. And there's nearly always surf on Bamborough Beach, and even today with a smooth sea and very little swell, there was enough of a surf to be able to pick up a few waves just to finish off the day. Absolutely gorgeous way to spend the day in the summer, eh? So, gorgeous weather, fantastic paddling, the Farne Islands, hard to beat as a destination to go sea kayaking.